Salut class, welcome to this video on the use of the subjunctive. Remember, you can pause and rewind the video as necessary, and just remember to keep smiling. We are going to get through this. I will answer any questions that you have, and you already have a very good basis of this based on what we've done in class. Just as a quick introduction, generally the construction that requires the use of the subjunctive consists of a main clause that implies doubt or subjectivity. This que is often important, and it usually introduces a subordinate clause that has a change in subject. So see here, one subject, two subject. Here's the doubt, and here's the que. Il doute que je finisse à l'heure. Okay? And just remember from our other video that there is no future tense in the subjunctive. The present tense is used to express both the present and the future. So as I mentioned, the two things that are essential for the subjunctive, there is implied doubt or subjectivity. If there is no doubt, then we do not require the subjunctive. So just like in class, il est certain que is followed by the indicative, and that just means what we've been using so far, forever in your French up until a week ago. The other one is the change of subject, and we've done this in class too. So if there is no change in subject, you don't need the subjunctive. This is like a sentence that you've been doing since French 1. There's only one subject. You don't need the subjunctive. If there's a change in subject, you do. There will be more examples in the near future. The first specific type of use of the subjunctive we're going to talk about are impersonal expressions. Impersonal expressions are expressions that exist only in the third person singular form. So that means that il or ce are the subjects. It often requires the subjunctive because the expression implies that the statement being made is open to doubt, meaning that it is the subjective opinion of the speaker. Here are some of those impersonal expressions that require the subjunctive. Notice that there are many that we have already used in class. And here are a few more. So after any of these, followed by que, you use the subjunctive. It's important, though, to notice and to note and to learn that there are expressions that do not require the subjunctive. These expressions have the concept of fact, certainty, and probability. And when they have fact, certainty, or probability, we use the indicative. And the indicative, again, is just what we've been doing in French forever up until this point. You notice that there are also a few of these that we've done in class already. Just a few things to note. Notice that il semble, if it's just il semble que, we use the subjunctive. If we have the me, il me semble que, we use the indicative. The other thing is that if the expressions are negative or interrogative, meaning they're a question, they express doubt and take the subjunctive. These are two things that we've also studied in class and practice, so don't forget what we did in class. It will really help you learn this new material. On the flip side, if the expression is both negative and a question, we use the indicative, since it's more of an affirmation rather than a true question. For example, isn't it clear that you were right? So it's not really a sincere question. It's looking for an affirmation. So just a quick recap. These are expressions that are expressions of fact, certainty, and probability. So we use the indicative, no subjunctive, just like we've practiced. However, if the expressions on that list are negative, we do use the subjunctive. Furthermore, if the expressions on that list are questions, we use the subjunctive. On the other hand, if these expressions are both a question and negative, it goes back to the indicative. Take a second to breathe and relax and think about how you're feeling. At the bottom, somewhere on the bottom right-hand corner, draw a smiley face. Maybe add some hair to your smiley face. Next, we're going to talk about expressions of will. These are considered to be statements of the person's personal desire or preference, and they require the subjunctive, but only when there is a change in subject. Here are some examples, and many of these you've seen before, even since French 1. And when there is no change in subject, you just follow it with the infinitive. See? It's saying that we prefer that we take the bus, so we just say we prefer to take the bus. However, if there is a change in the subject, that's when we use the subjunctive. We practice this in class too, right? We prefer that you take the bus. The first subject is nous, second subject is tu. Okay? I want that you dance with me. First subject is je, second subject is tu, so we use the subjunctive. All right, now let's talk about expressions of thought. You've known the verbs croire, penser, and espérer for a long time. These verbs only take the subjunctive when they're used in a question or when they're negative. So let's take a look at what that means. These are examples of sentences that you've been able to say since you were in French 1 or 2. These use the indicative, just like you have always done. However, there are two new things with these verbs. Firstly, if it's negative, it then uses the subjunctive. Negative, subjunctive. Okay. Furthermore, if these verbs are used in questions, they take the subjunctive. However, when they're both negative and a question, it goes back to the indicative. Next, let's talk about the use of the subjunctive with expressions of emotion. These are things that you really try to do a lot, so now you're going to learn exactly how you really should do them. Here are some expressions of emotion that you are probably familiar with. When there is no change of subject, we just use the indicative. But what you need to notice is that we use de and then the infinitive. So we have tu as peur d'être en retard. You are scared to be late. You yourself are scared of yourself being late. So you just use the expression conjugated for the subject, tu as peur, and then you have the de, but which changes to d apostrophe for a vowel, and then followed by the infinitive. So notice how that works with all of these. However, just like we talked about before and like we talked about in class, if there's a change in subject, that's when we use the subjunctive. Tu as peur qu'il soit en retard. Your first subject is tu, your second subject is il. So because your subject changes, it's the subjunctive. First subject je, second subject vous, requires the subjunctive. Please note that these are not all of the expressions of emotions. Just use your knowledge of vocabulary to help you learn more and make sure that you're using the subjunctive correctly. Also, just keep in mind, no change in subject, then you just use the infinitive. Next, remember we use the subjunctive when we're talking about doubt. So these expressions, which imply doubt, if we use them affirmatively or in a question, they require the subjunctive because there is doubt. Ooh. Doubt, subjunctive. Doubt, subjunctive. However, when they're used negatively, that doubt kind of goes away. So if it's negative, we use the indicative. Negative, indicative. And finally, there are some conjunctions that are used that require the use of the subjunctive. These are pretty cool. This one's my favorite. Phew, you made it. Just remember that this is just an introduction. There are other expressions, emotions, conjunctions, etc. that require the subjunctive, but this will be a great start for you to learn. Félicitations. You've reached the end of the video. Please feel free to watch it again. Come to class with specific questions, and I will be happy to help you continue to improve your use of the subjunctive.